What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally. All of our programming is brought to you by you, the people of Patreon. Thank you for your support. We've got a couple Patreon questions today. Hey, if you're new here, let me encourage you to subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff, comment, like, all those things. They help to boost our programming in the algorithm, and you guys do a freaking awesome job at that. We're brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK. SupplementSource.ca for our Canadians, and Strom Sports Nutrition for those of you in the UK. Plus, if you're in the UK, you can get your labs done by Dave at Eval. Dave, we've got a bunch of listener questions. We're going to get into those. If you guys have questions, comment below. But for starters, I wanted to dive straight into this video that I found. Have you seen this?
Oh, the Jesse James West thing. No, I haven't. I don't. I do not watch anything I do.
Well, we are today. We're going to watch this today. It's going to be fun. And then after that, we're going to tackle listener questions. Guys, we always have timestamps below if you want to, click through anything. Let's see. I'm just going to hit the play button. We'll watch a little intro, and then we're going to cut to the part where he's at the Eval booth at the Arnold, I believe. Let's see.
These are steroids. And if caught, you could be sentenced to years in prison, thousands of dollars of fines, and even be considered a felon. If you were in the US. But we're in the UK, baby, and they're legal.
Yeah!
Say nothing if you're on steroids.
Ooh.
Not natty. I have 4 goals this weekend. 1, I want to talk to the gym bros, see what they have to say about the UK steroid epidemic. 2, speak to the biggest fitness influencers in the UK. 3, speak to the experts who know
Dave.
way more than I do. Because let's be real, I only know a little. And 4, the final and most difficult one of them all, find a steroid dealer to interview.
Okay, let's cut forward here. I'm going to cut to the part where he gets to the Eval booth. And I thought that was interesting. So I think I saw Romana there.
Yeah, he interviewed Romana, he interviewed Zach, he interviewed Josh Law, he interviewed Nathan Stiles, that's Josh, he interviewed a couple of researchers.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. I'm getting an ad here. I don't have ad blockers, so we have to get through this ad first. Here we go.
Could find some answers. Normally in the US, I'm very scared to ask people this stuff, but
hey, that's Nathan Stiles in the background, isn't it?
I'm gonna start off really strong. Are you natty or no?
No, I'm definitely not. I'm everything. You say it, I'm on it.
Are you natural or not?
No, I'm not.
I'm natural as the modified food in
Hey,
the
it's Zach.
supermarket.
On it. On it. Twice as much.
Is it easy to get PEDs in the UK?
Yes.
Do you know a guy?
Maybe.
What's your take on the legalization of the anabolic steroid?
Who is that? I don't know him.
Josh Law is one of our athletes. He also works for us as well. He's a very good amateur.
He's got some freaking incredible arms and delts on him, and pecs too. He looks like a big dude.
He is a big dude. He's probably, I'm guessing he's around 270, 280 there.
Okay, yeah, he looks all of it too. Let's see what he has to say.
But he just takes pace.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That comes down to personal use. Personal use can come in many shapes and forms. If you're responsible, they can be used very well, yes.
They should legalize steroids in the way the same way they should legalize. Steroids can be a good thing. If it's going to undermarket, there's a lot of underground labs what are basically selling rubbish.
Do you think
They had to put closed captions under Zach when he talked. Did you notice that?
legalization of steroids in the UK is good or bad?
I personally
Romana.
think it's bad because if you're not informed, you can end up doing yourself a lot of damage. I think additionally, what needs to be addressed is the stigma around steroid use in the UK. Quite often, healthcare professionals will be quite demonising about it and not necessarily help the people that are going to them.
Really?
Yeah.
They'll kind of like shoo you to the side because you're on gear?
Stop bodybuilding. Stop taking steroids.
Do you think that there's any chance that because it's legal, technically, that younger kids might get their hands on it easier?
Yes, and as I said to my earlier quote, at the same risk of them getting hold of anything easier. It's just what drugs you get hold of.
So far,
Hey, is this Alex that we talked to here?
Yes.
Frankly knows if what it says on the vial is what it says. So
very common in
So this is Alex that we talked to, who was doing the research on to see if it basically steroids create epigenetic changes to your muscle.
Yes, and he was with a guy who's doing a book now on anabolics.
Okay.
But not a technical book. He's doing a book looking at anabolics as a culture.
Oh, okay. Let's see what he says.
That is by far the most common way, yes. So the best academic guess is there's right now 1 million anabolic steroid users in the UK.
Is the UK in a steroid epidemic?
It could be a burgeoning health problem, and there's definitely more
1 million?
anabolic steroid users recreationally now than there was 10, 20 years ago.
So because people are very prevalent in using them in the UK, is that affecting the healthcare and the country of the UK?
Well, it could do in the future, that's the thing. If there is about 1 million users right now, and say even only 5% of them abuse it, then that's a lot of thousands of people that could have health consequences that the National Health Service is potentially going to have to be the burden of.
Huh. And then he goes to Dave. Here's Dave here. And he said 1 million people in the UK. Is that true, Dave? 1 million people are using gear in the UK?
So the last AS UK project looking at number of users, I think they came back with saying they estimated around a top end figure of around around 650,000.
Okay.
I feel, and I've said this to them, I feel that research is a little flawed, because of the revenues they use to get the numbers.
Oh, yeah, because see, from my perspective as an American, I thought that I didn't even know there was 1 million people in England. Like, I thought there was like maybe a couple handful of people that lived in England, because it's such a small island, you know, compared to my big country. Yes. You know what I mean? I'm kidding, guys.
There's only 74 of us.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been to the northern England, Dave. It was all countryside and little hamlets and stuff. That was it. That's it.
I would be with Tim. I would say we're looking at around 1 million. Yes.
All right, and let's see what he's getting ready to talk to the big guy, guys. Let's see what he has to say about Dave.
Came with horrible consequences, and he is now an average.
Oh wait, I got to roll it back a little bit here.
400.
Crosland. Here we go.
Lead a burden on the healthcare system. I was interviewing athletes at the Eval booth, and they all recommended that I speak to one man and one man only. David Crosland, a former bodybuilder who was a part of a steroid experiment, which led him to grow up to 460 pounds.
60?
This came with horrible consequences, and he is now an advocate for healthy bodybuilding practices. He is an expert court witness in the steroids of.
I know that guy.
Basically, Mr.
I know
Boy.
that guy.
That's what I'm going to call you right now. Are steroids legal here?
They are legal to possess, but not supply.
If you can use them, but you can't sell them or you can't give them to anybody, how are people getting it?
There is no criminal activity for purchasing them. The criminal activity is on the side of the person supplying them.
So the only one at risk is the dealer?
Yes.
Really? If I'm giving you a normal, let's say monthly dose, what would be like a typical amount of time or the fine that it would be?
Very little, if anything at all. The cost of prosecution is not worth the social impact of what you're doing.
Okay. So you can kind of get away with it, at least like more likely to get away with it?
Yeah, a lot of officers just don't know the law. They're not very experienced with it. Enforcement of those compounds being supplied is actually generally quite low.
Okay, check this out. When I first arrived to the UK, I tried.
What did you think, Dave? What did you think of all this?
I found him genuinely interested.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's doing it for revenue. He's doing it for his channel.
It's got to be kind of like sensational and stuff, sure.
Obviously, the questions he asked were sensible. He was genuinely interested. I think he genuinely found the subject matter interesting and intriguing. He had a certain expectation for the content he wanted to get, in the sense of the professionalism of it.
Oh, okay.
So he got a bit frustrated because we got quite a bit of background noise when we were outside. We moved locations once because we kept getting disturbed.
Really?
But yeah, I mean, he was fine. A little bit full on. But that, I believe, is just his personality. I think he said he had a sort of, some sort of attention disorder type personality traits, and he tended to be a bit all or nothing. But yeah, I mean, he initially approached us via. He'd spoke to a few pros over here that all pointed him to me.
Okay.
So then he spoke to me, and then his assistant spoke to me, and it was just like, we'll meet, or we'll do this. Yeah, fine, whatever. I said, I can meet you in a hotel if you want to do it away from the show.
Yeah.
Or whatever, it was whatever they wanted to do. Anyway, they came around the booth at the show. We went off. We were a good hour and a half recording.
Okay.
And then he said, could he come back to the booth? And I was like, yeah, come, meet a few people. So, and obviously he turned up, and He interviewed Zach, poor lad. He interviewed Romana, he interviewed Josh, he interviewed Nath, and then the researchers turned up, so he interviewed them as well, which it just worked really well for him.
It turned out cool, man. I watched the whole thing too, so I thought he did a good job. I honestly, it's funny because it popped up in the algorithm for me. I didn't even like seek it out. I just watched it and I was like, there's Dave. And then of course we had to bring that on. We had that commercial that we played at the end of the last episode as a cliffhanger. So I guess we'll have to play that one another day. You know, we can only do so many watch so many videos. We could just do like a whole episode of like all we do is just sit here and watch videos. You could do that if you wanted.
Dave looking a dick. Yeah.
But that was cool. Andy mentioned Eval, which is awesome. You know what I mean? It's cool to see.
I found him a nice enough bloke. Obviously, I don't know what he's like as a person or anything.
Sure.
He was pleasant enough, and he seemed to do it justice. I got the Guardian on the phone yesterday. They're coming up to see me next week after. So they're doing a piece as well, and then one of the guys that turned up at the booth, one of the researchers, he's doing this book. Like I said, he's doing this book, but on steroid culture rather than like the harms or.
I'm seeing a lot of that. I had Victoria just talked with people from GQ about like the social side of anabolics. And somebody pointed a guy from I think I told you about it, the UK Sun, newspaper called The Sun.
Yeah, it's shithole.
Is it? Yeah, well, I did an interview with them. I did an interview with them about that same topic. So it seems like all these magazines and papers are like, it's really starting to kind of, I think as mentioned in this video, you talked about it. They bring you back a little bit later, and you mentioned something about the fake natties, and there's some sort of legislation or something possibly in the UK. So, what was the deal with that?
There is. So a couple of weeks before, I'd done that conference up at Newcastle. And one of the speakers was a girl who was talking about legislation around social media marketing and influence. And there is already legislation in place that sort of controls the misrepresentation of a product through unrealistic imagery.
I found the clip of you talking about it here. Let's see what Dave says.
America and other places, it's like taboo.
We're having a growing exposure. It's desensitized people to it. The more you see it, the more you hear about it, the less sensationalistic it is. Globally, the UK has pioneered more open discussion about the subject, full stop. I mean, there's more athletes here openly discussing what they do, particularly within the bodybuilding community. Yep. So the pros being open has been a step forward to say, look, I take these things, but I ain't doing that much. You don't need to be doing 5 grams, 6 grams to be a pro. You need to focus on your training and your diet. These are a secondary action. These are not the primary goal.
That brought me to the next task. Interview the top fitness.
Oh, I thought that was the part. They must have brought you back there at another point then. You were in there a few different spots. So anyway, yeah, that'd be cool that'd be interesting if they do that.
They said there is legislation around misrepresentation of the effects of a product. And part of that is what this girl was suggesting was that we may get to a point where a influencer or somebody with a physique who's marketing a supplement will have to have a little disclaimer in the bottom that basically says this physique is not a direct result of using this product.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah. All that stuff goes way back, though, to like the beginning of bodybuilding. You know, Jack LaLanne selling, elastic bands in the back of magazines, telling people they're going to get jacked with them. You know.
Yeah, so that's the general rule. I mean, she had said she had posed. It was more posing questions, but she had suggested that she didn't feel that making a influencer declare their usage was ever going to be viable.
Yeah.
But the basic underlying drive of it was that they were questioning whether it should be made legal or should be made a condition of social media influencers that they were to declare what they did to achieve the look they had, be it cosmetic surgery, be it chemical enhancement, that they could not claim they were natural if they weren't. They could not claim they built their physique through natural products if they didn't, and that they couldn't even intimate that through the fact that they visually showed themselves advertising the product. The reality is that's probably never going to happen because of the legality of this drug use in different countries.
True.
But what would be a way of moving forward would be a disclaimer that this physique was not built from using this product or something of that nature.
Okay. Okay.
So it's being looked at. Whether it goes anywhere or not, we don't know, because, I mean, there is legislation in place that does regulate a lot of this already, but it's getting the social media platforms to actually enforce it, and then being practically able to enforce it is another problem as well.
All right. Well, listen, let's jump into our listener questions because we do have a bunch of them, but I wanted to start off with that because I thought it'd be fun. And I'm especially excited because you didn't even get to see it yet. There is more. He brings you back a couple more times through the video. So you got a good chunk of screen time there. You'll have to check the rest of it out. And it's cool to see everybody else from Eval there. I liked seeing that. So first question of the week here, and by the way, guys, if you want to take part in the next show, then definitely comment below, plus all your comments and likes, all that stuff. It helps to boost our programming in the algorithm. He says, a friend of mine had a question. So this isn't apparently for him. This is for a friend, Dave. He says, is there any blood work that can be done to show the methyl estrogen created by MENT?
There will be, but I know UK-wise, it's not commonly available. You'd probably, if you're stateside, you've probably got lab work stateside is much better for getting shit that's a bit left of center.
Yeah.
UK, it's a very specialized field. Not a lot of labs will offer it. Eurothins might. I've never particularly asked them. Now, Eurothins is the biggest private lab concern in the UK. It's a big lab.
Really?
And if we want to do a sensitive estrogen test, they actually send it to another lab. They don't do that in-house.
Okay.
And the reason being around that is the commercial viability of tests. So if we've got time, I can explain it, but it's not a 5 minute. It's not a long conversation, but it's not a 5 minute conversation. Okay.
People just want to know what to do. I mean, you could. I guess I guess there's going to be at least two people who are going to be like, "Hey, I want to know." So they're going to be pissed if I don't let you explain it, Dave. That's what's going to happen here. So tell us.
I'll do a very summed down version.
Yeah.
Labs set up machines to repeat one set of tests continuously.
Okay.
It's viable. So what they do is a machine has to be set up. It has to be programmed to do the test you want it to do, and the reagent that's required for that test has to be fitted into the machine. To change a machine to do different tests takes time. So what they tend to do is they'll have one machine, FBC only.
Oh.
One machine doing certain panel of hormones only. And these machines, that's all they ever do.
Okay.
So you end up with a load of machines dedicated to individual testing.
Huh.
When you start getting into specialist testing, you end up having a machine that has to be recalibrated, reset, the selective reagent used for that test, and it's done manually. Commercial labs tend not to do that. Too expensive, takes too long. So you tend to find those tests only in specialist medical labs attached to specialist hospitals. They do sell that service out, but because of the time constraints, it's not commercially viable for a main lab. So there's only a few labs do it over here.
It sounds expensive.
Bigger population in the States, bigger requirement for certain testing, more viability that a lab will have dedicated machines to do certain testing because there's more people wanting it.
And there's a lot of guys using MENT over here too. So, there's that. All right. Casey from Patreon, and thank you for your support over at Patreon, Casey. He says, around how much will your test increase per 100 milligrams of test?
Roughly, and there's a few variables here, body mass being one, body fat being another, genetics being another, and I'll do a quick example of genetic changes in a second, but I would expect to see somewhere in the region of about 18 to 20 nmol per 100 milligrams.
What does that roughly equate to in American numbers?
What's your upper limit? Is it 800?
There's two different limits. One of them's about 1,000. One of them's like 900.
Quick conversion, 2 seconds.
Yeah.
600.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's 600. Okay.
Roughly.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that, give or take, depending on the individual, right? We've seen, we've talked about it before. One guy takes 300 to get it into range, whereas most guys are taking far less, 100, 150 to have like a good, healthy TRT level.
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, for a fat bastard, I actually metabolize tests slowly. So my levels will stay elevated for longer than now. Normally with fat people, you metabolize tests quite quickly because you convert it to estrogen at an extremely high rate. Whereas I mean, like my TRT, it's 1 ml of prescription sussed every 3 weeks, and that keeps me at good levels.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't go through it very quickly, which is possibly why I grew the way I grew on what I did.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas I know people that will need the same drug, the same prescription every 12 days because they're metabolizing it much quicker. So, yeah, it can vary quite significantly from person to person.
Yeah, I need about 250 sussed every other day to stay in a good, healthy range, personally. That keeps me in a good spot, you know. Just good, healthy, normal, little primo, maybe. Just to keep my primo levels, you know, it's like a high natural range usually.
Yeah, because that's obviously just a sports TRT because you are a sports person, aren't you?
Yeah, Dave. Somebody commented this week. They're like, one way to trigger Dave, mention sports TRT. That's true, man. Every time somebody says something like that, you have your tirade, which we'll have to find one of those guys. We'll have to see if we can trigger Dave with sports TRT again. How about this one? This is Juice 250 is his name. Question for the next DNS podcast. My doctor has me at 140 milligrams of test SIP, which keeps me around 800 nanograms. So, you know, US levels. He says, in between blood work, sometimes I'll boost up to 400 milligrams of test SIP. How long would I expect to take my levels to drop back down within range after switching back to 140? I usually wait around 2 months, and that does the trick, but maybe I'm waiting too long. What else would tip my doctor off that I'm raising the dose here and there? So this is a common thing, man. You know, and I'm all for guys doing what they want to do, but and I'm all for going to your doctor, but you will find some TRT doctors don't want you to, you know, surprise, double your medication. They call that abuse, you know, while you're not checking in with them. So it can be tricky. It can be tricky. What are your thoughts here, though, Dave?
So the quickest way to get it down is to not do anything.
Yes.
And we've done this before about how elevated levels stay elevated post-cycle when you go straight on TRT. So if he does his elevated period, when he's finished his elevated period, he does nothing for 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on how high he's gone, to allow his levels to drop down, and then he picks his TRT back up. Where it's not necessarily going to tip his doctor off, but it might get his doctor asking a few questions, is the negative impacts that testosterone is going to have in the sense of lowering his HDL or thickening his blood.
Yeah.
So his doctor may look at actually lowering his TRT dose if he's seeing HDL get slammed or he's seeing blood thickness and become a problem. So if he's going to do these higher cycles in between, which, as you've already said, is entirely his choice, he needs to also look at offsetting the negatives that they create, which will be blood thickening. So he may need to do a bloodlet before he goes to his doctor for his checkup. He's going to need some extra HDL support to offset the fact that it's going to lower his HDL level. If he clears it down early enough, because he really needs 2 or 3 weeks of being at natural levels running into his checkup, Otherwise, you'll see estrogen high as well, and probably start looking at, well, we need to do something to bring the estrogen down, which is going to be counterproductive long term.
Yeah.
Estrogen can run anywhere between a week and 2 weeks behind test. So, for argument's sake, you create a test level, and I'll speak American, you create a test level of 1600, and your estrogen goes up to respond that. You then drop that level quite rapidly because you just don't take anything, so you're going to drop within line of your half-life of your drug. Your estrogen is going to stay high for a couple of weeks before it starts to come down. So you've got to just factor in that fact that estrogen is always going to be behind. But yeah, I mean, the quickest and most efficient way would be stop what you're doing, do nothing, let it come down, and then restart your TRT, rather than trying to bring your TRT in, because you're looking at about 2 months. So his timing, I actually don't think he will be elevated for long before his check if he's waiting 2 months. I think you'll find probably week 6, week 7 is where he drops back into range, and he's only just getting into it before they check him.
Yeah. And we've talked about, like you said, we've talked about this before in regard to coming off cycle, going back to TRT. You gave us a great explanation, on it. And I guess guys could go back and listen to that. And the other thing, when people talk to us about this topic, that we always want to mention is look at your other factors. It's not just that test and estrogen, right? I mean, what's it doing to your hematocrit? What's it doing to your cholesterol? If those things are messed up, and then you go back to your doctor and you've got high hematocrit, crappy cholesterol, he's going to say, oh my God, your test looks, fine, but you're ruining your health with it. We can't have you on TRT because your hematocrit's through the roof, I'm
going to pick a bone with you here.
Why?
It's not your hematocrit you want to be concerned about. It's your red blood cell count and your hemoglobin.
Okay, well, I'll go with that. But I would say, though, hematocrit is what we usually see, though, as being highly elevated.
So, hematocrit is a measurement of the number of red cells in a volume of blood. Okay? If hematocrit is high and hemo and red blood cells are normal, you're dehydrated. You do not have thick blood. You are dehydrated. You have to have high hemo or high reds to have thick blood, irrespective of what hematocrit reads.
Okay, generally, in the cases of somebody running high gear, if they have high
hemo and high red cell, you will have high hematocrit, yes.
Yeah.
But do not use hematocrit as a standalone marker. That's my point.
Fine, Dave.
Right. Best.
Fine. One of the common questions we get asked by you guys is, what would you do differently with your bodybuilding if you could go back in time? Given all the experience and education I have today, there's a number of things that I would have done differently. One of them is that I would have started using collagen sooner. Collagen is one of the few supplements that will actually rebuild connective tissue. It took me tearing my supraspinatus in 2021 to get with the program. I use True Nutrition's hydrolyzed beef collagen. I get the unflavored version. I pay for it myself, just like you guys do. I use 20 grams a day, mix it into my coffee. It's totally unflavored. You don't even taste it. Plus, I use 10 grams of their micronized creatine. Creatine has been shown to improve brain health, especially for the aging brain. I need that. And of course, we've always known about the muscle building effects. So this is my morning routine every day, and I'm encouraging you guys to do the same. Use our code THINK for savings. Plus, it's the only way for them to know that this advertising is being heard. Otherwise, they just think you're some random dude that clicked on an ad.
Ain't nothing to it but to do it.
All right.
So you want a trigger? There's my new trigger.
All right, what else do we have here? Because we do have a lot of them, Dave. Like I said, a lot of people. Oh, how about this one? I'm going to drop it up on the screen here. Another amazing show. My question is, where's Christmas Cabbage? Is he safe at Dave's, or did Scott put him in a cargo ship? That's not Christmas Cabbage, Dave.
It is.
Did Scott put him on a cargo ship and he's stuck to sea? He's stuck to sea, trying to not to get seasick from rolling around. Prayers and speedy recovery, Dave. That is not Christmas Cabbage.
It is.
Guys, I feel like Dave is trying to create a narrative here that is different than the reality you and I would have seen.
That's Christmas Cabbage.
Did you lose Christmas Cabbage, Dave?
Not lose him.
What happened to Christmas Cabbage? Did you give him away?
No. He's in the office somewhere.
Oh, you just aren't sure where that is at the moment?
It bounced off my daughter's head, and I don't know where it landed.
Oh, okay. So he is safe. He's in the office. He's at the compound still. That's all we needed to know. All right. How about this one? Let me open this up so I can see it. He says, thank you guys for another great episode. This is one of my favorite Uncle Dave segments. I have a question as well. What characteristics do you prefer when dealing with a client? What type of person would be the ideal candidate for a client for you guys? Attributes such as hardworking, work ethic, open-mindedness, transparency. Thanks, guys. All those things are good.
Yes, I would rather have a client that tries and engages, that has shit genetics, rather than a client who has the best genetics in the world but doesn't try. For me, the most frustrating element around a client is one that's untruthful.
Oh, yeah.
Because you will not be getting the results or the effects that you expect, and then you're like constantly going, right, well, where's this going wrong? What is going wrong? Are you sticking to your diet? Yes, I'm sticking to my diet. Right? Are you doing the training? Yes, I'm doing my training. And I think one of the hard ones is I don't mind someone maybe not giving it 100%, 10% in the gym, or not being super dedicated with things, as long as they're honest with me about it.
Yeah.
Because then we can try and work around that the best we can. But when you've got someone who's not making progress, and it's like, they're not doing what they need to do in the gym from a training point of view, but that they just will never accept that. Yeah. That gets frustrating, because you as a coach, and I know you shouldn't, but it's just human nature, you as a coach start to lose interest, because it's like, I've got nothing else I can do with this guy, because the problem is him, but I can't have that conversation because he's not going to listen. And you tend to then deliberately lose them in one way or another, because they're not rewarding to work with. I enjoy coaching people that engage, even if they're not super dedicated or not super strict or whatever it is. That doesn't matter to me, as long as you're giving what you can to the best of your ability and you're honest about that. I'm good with that, and I enjoy coaching them rather than people who are super dedicated but are honest.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. And I don't care who you're working with. If you're going to hire a coach and you're not going to be honest with them, I mean, that's going to ruin everything. And I got to be honest, I've been not honest with a coach in the past. My second contest prep, Dave, I wasn't honest with my coach about what I was doing, okay? It did work out in the end, but it was tricky. It was tricky because I ended up cutting carbs harder than he had done. I ended up pushing further than he would have pushed me. But here's the problem with that. He sees how you're looking, and then so let's say he said eat 1 cup of rice with every meal. And I do that for a little while, and then I feel like I'm not making progress. And then let's say like I started going, man, I'm just going to stop eating rice with those last 2 meals. So I stop eating rice those last 2 meals, and I'm getting leaner now, right? And then I check back in with him, and he's like, okay, yeah, this looks good. Now do this. Well, like oh shit. So I've been eating 3 cups of rice, and now I'm supposed to be eating 2 in it. You know what I mean? It's like you got to, and then I had to like keep doing a mental equation in my head where it was like, okay, so actually he said, cut it back to a 1/2 cup. I was already eating a 1/2 cup. So now I eat a 1/4 cup. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'll do. And it did work out. And it was one of my best looks to date, to be completely honest. Like I was peeled. That said, yeah, man, like this whole thing, it's all about communication. So
yeah, I mean,
if I were to go back, I would have just talked to my coach and been like, listen, man, can I push harder? I love it when a client comes to me and they're like, hey, can I do extra cardio? There's 2 types of people, Dave. There's people that say, what less can I do and still get the results? And what more can I do to get even better? And if a guy comes to me and says like, hey, what can we do to push harder? I would rather tell him like, hey, no, we're 100% on track. Don't touch anything, and know we're on that same page, than, have him go behind my back and do something like I did.
I would have more respect. I had a client actually, and he came to me and he said, I will stick to your diet and your training Monday to Friday. He says, but 5 o'clock Friday till I go to bed Sunday night, you can fuck off. He said, I'm drinking, I'm eating curries, I'm enjoying my life.
I'm eating curries.
And I was like, this is going to affect your progress. And he went, yeah, I realize that. He says, but I want to compensate for that with drugs. And I'm like, now, this is where it gets interesting, because I sort of don't have an issue with that if we're all open and honest what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
I have an issue with it when it's done secretively because you're trying to hide or get away with something that you shouldn't be doing. If someone says to me, look, I want to abuse drugs to compensate for the fact that I don't have the dedication or discipline to stick to a diet and training, then it's like, the first thing is, look, that's not ideal.
Yeah.
But at least we can work around minimizing the risk they're exposing them to, because
that's true too.
If you're not guiding them, they're only going to do much worse on their own.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, like with this guy, when he started to see what we could achieve in those 5 short days, which wasn't huge, but he actually naturally started to cut back on the weekends. And eventually he fell in line because he was like, you know what? I'm sick of feeling shit till Wednesday. And by Friday, I'm feeling great again. I've got a load of energy. Then come Monday, I feel like crap. And so there was a natural progression where he moved that way anyway.
I like when that happens.
If he'd have been lying about it and not being honest about it, we couldn't have worked around things. And obviously there's factors like what we do with chemicals based on what you're doing recreationally as well, because there can be impacts there that we need to be aware of, particularly with alcohol and estrogen levels and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a strange line, and I've never really got to the bottom of where we go with it. In if someone is open about the fact that they want to compensate for poor behavior with chemicals, what do you do with that? And do you guide them because you can at least keep minimizing the risks they're exposing them to, or do you walk away from it and say, no, I'm not getting involved with that? And I've never come to an answer with that. As a general thing, it's been a case of I'll see how each person goes.
I consulted with a guy who was vegan, and he wanted to prove to the world that he could get huge being vegan. And he made up for it by running much higher doses of compounds like tren to try to, basically make up for the fact that he wasn't getting animal sources of protein. And I consulted with him several times, and eventually I said, I just can't get behind it, man.
Yeah, there are certain things that I would never do, and one of the drugs I'm very opposed to is tren, because I've seen the long-term damage mentally that people have suffered with that.
All right. How about this one? We've got one. So last week we were talking about spot administration of Helios, Clen, and Yohimbine. And you said there's another compound, PGF2A. The question is, what was that spot injection fat loss stuff?
Right. So PGF2A, you would normally actually make it into an aqueous cream. So you'd mix it with an aqueous cream, and then you would smother it on the area you want to spot reduce, and then seal it with cling film. What PGF2A does is actually destroys fat cells, but it is a very unpleasant drug to use.
How so, Dave?
It causes you to shit yourself.
How would you know this, Dave?
Because I've used it. It also aspirates if you inject it, which you can cite it. If you inject it, it aspirates through the lungs. So effectively, what you get post-injection is an inability to breathe for a few seconds and a sudden urge to crap your pants.
Yeah, those are things I try to avoid. You know what I'm saying? Like, as far as side effects, those side effects don't sound very good to me.
As a topical, it's much milder in that essence. As a topical, it doesn't have that sort of impact whatsoever. But it's a growth factor. PGF2A is a growth factor. Can't get it near females. Cannot touch a female if you've got it on your hands. Cannot get the cream near a female in any way, shape, or form. It will cause them to go into a false labor.
That's crazy. How about this one? Great show as always. Question for the next one. Does DECA raise hematocrit more than other anabolic compounds? If so, would this be dose dependent? Would running it at a low dose, say 250 milligrams per week, along with a similar dose of test, still potentially raise hematocrit significantly? And finally, is donating blood something that always needs to be done when running EQ? Thanks.
Doesn't raise hematocrit at all.
No?
No steroid does. Steroids will raise hemoglobin and red blood cells.
But it won't touch your hematocrit.
No. Hematocrit isn't... hematocrit is not a thing.
It's made up? Is that what you're telling me?
No.
False narrative?
No.
Is that what it is?
No. It's not a physical thing.
What is
hematocrit is an indication of the volume of red cells in a given volume of blood.
Okay.
Hemoglobin is an actual thing. It's a product within blood. Red blood cells are actual things. They are cells within blood. Plasma, actual thing. The fluid in blood. Hematocrit isn't an item of blood.
So it's the volume of.
No, it's a reflection of the levels within blood, but it's not actually an item.
It's a reflection. Iron, so if it's higher,
right? So iron is a measurement of iron. Yeah.
Right.
Ferritin is a measurement of iron storage. Yeah.
Yes.
Transferrin saturation is how much iron storage you're currently using. It's not actually a thing. It's not iron. It's not an iron storage. It is a reflection of the state of the ingredients in iron, right?
So it's more of a measurement of volume.
It's a measurement of... It's actually a reflection of how large your red cells are and how large? How large your red cells are and how many of them are in a given volume of blood.
Yes.
So you can have very high red cells and have normal hematocrit if those red cells are small. It's based on the volume that those red cells occupy, not the number of red cells. So you can have normal red cells, high hemoglobin, and have high hematocrit because the volume of cells has increased because they contain more hemoglobin, which means they're larger, so therefore they occupy more volume in that given space of blood.
Let me restate this question. I'm going to change a couple of the words, okay? Let me open it back up. I'm going to start again. Great show as always. Question for the next one. Does EQ cause thicker blood more so than other anabolics? If so, would that be dose dependent? Would running a low dose, say 250 milligrams per week, along with a similar dose of test, still potentially create thicker blood significantly?
Right, you said DECA first time around.
Did I?
Yeah, so when you edit it, just check. You said DECA.
All right, I will.
So yeah, EQ will, even at lower doses. That's its main job. I mean, that's one of the things EQ was developed for, was to increase hemoglobin and red cell levels. So yes, it will. As a result, it will reflect in an increase in blood thickness. Oxymethylone is the other drug that was specifically developed for that. I do believe that there is some not parallels, but there is some relationship between estrogen levels and the thickening of blood, but I don't actually know what it is. It's something I would like to look at, is that if you run higher levels of estrogen, do you get an increase in blood thickening as opposed to a low level of estrogen but the same level of testosterone?
If you see anything with that, let me know. I'd be curious myself.
Yeah, it's something I would like to find out about. But yes, EQ, It's what it's designed for, and it will do it. Yes, it is dose dependent. It is also person dependent. There are other factors that come into blood thickening as well. Things like oxygen restriction, overall body mass, and other factors that can play into it as well. Because if you have anything that restricts oxygen, it's going to increase your hemoglobin content, which is in turn going to thicken your blood. So things like snoring, smoking, high altitude training, oxygen restriction masks will all increase your hemoglobin levels, which in turn will thicken your blood.
Yeah. I work with a guy who didn't want to use a CPAP. He's very resistant to it. Just, you know how like we put our foot down and sometimes it's just like it doesn't make sense why. He was like, no, man, I want to be able to roll over and kiss my wife in the middle of the night, you know, not have the stupid mask on my face. He just didn't want to wear it. And he's finally becoming more compliant with it. And I do think one thing too about that note is we've seen some questions in the group where people have said like, I'm not really big enough to need a CPAP yet. And it's not the size that you are. It's the amount of room you have to breathe. So me at 230 needed a CPAP. Me at 215 now, I still need a CPAP. Whereas a guy like Ron, and that could be a genetic factor there too, right? Ron Partlow, 300 pounds and never needed a CPAP in his life as far as he knew at least, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I still use what I fell out with mine. Just got fed up with the bloody thing. No real reason, because actually I get a better night's sleep when I use it and everything else.
Yeah, me too.
And I had some regular bloods and docs like, your hemo's up. I went, yeah, I'll get back on my CPAP. And lo and behold, I've got back on my CPAP, my hemo's come down.
Nice. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that. And then the additional stress that you have on your heart, having to pump harder while you sleep because you're trying to get blood to your brain. And if you're not breathing enough, then that blood has to move faster. So it's not a good thing. If you need a CPAP, you get better gains, you get better rest, but plus you protect your health too.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're starving your body of oxygen at rest. And the other thing is it's quite self-perpetuating because if you have thick blood, so you need a CPAP, so you're starving your oxygen when you're sleeping, that causes your hemoglobin to increase. But at rest, your body doesn't pump the blood round fast enough, so you get fatigue and a lack of oxygen because your blood's thick and your heart can't pump it quick enough. So as a result, your hemoglobin increases even more. So it's self-perpetuating to an extent, particularly if you're sedentary. If you're active, thicker blood becomes less of an issue, which is why cyclists deliberately increase it, because they're continually taking advantage of that with the high volume of cardiovascular training that they actually do.
And it's not necessarily healthy for them to do that, but cycling is probably like equally as unhealthy as bodybuilding. So there is that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the offset that a cyclist has is cardiovascularly, they're incredibly fit, far fitter than a bodybuilder's ever going to be. So one, they have very powerful and strong and healthy hearts. And two, they do huge amounts of cardiovascular endurance work, which actually uses up hemoglobin and lowers levels. So they are actually actively doing something that's going to bring their hemo down anyway.
Yeah.
Ultra marathon runners generally struggle with anemia.
Yeah.
Because they go through so much red material when they're actually performing and exercising.
I think I told you, well, this was a few years ago now, 3 years ago, my hematocrit was really high from lung issues due to the long flu bug. And it was like 57 point something. And after going to cardio 30 minutes a day, because I was doing no cardio, a month later it was 50.1.
No, it definitely does happen. Which is why this my standpoint on cardio being such an important factor in regulating health is because it has all these little benefits that add up to helping manage what we do without actually having to rely on bloodlets and supplements and everything else that we do use.
Yeah. I actually was scheduled to do phlebotomy and I went in and I was 50.1. They tested it first, before they took the blood. And then I was like, nah, I'm good then. I'm going to leave it here. I hate doing blood donation in phlebotomy. How about this one? Do you think that the neurotoxicity of nandrolones is as big of a deal as people currently make it out to be? I've been running gear for 13 years and wasn't until recently, the last 3 or 4, that this has been an issue.
Now, the science tells us that nandrolone can cause depression. And that it can affect memory long term and things like that. And I do feel that I've personally struggled with memory due to long term exposure to nandrolones. But I was using very high doses of Deca for extended periods of time, and it's been a backbone of pretty much every cycle I've ever done has had Deca in it to some degree, or most of them have. Yeah. So I freely accept that there was going to be some issues. I never had any issues with low mood on Deca. I never had any problems with depressant-like features on Deca or anything like that. And from my knowledge of people around me at the time, neither did anyone else.
Yeah.
Now, I do see people that struggle with Deca. I've had clients that genuinely struggle with Deca. It makes them feel very low, very fed up, very down in the dumps. And when it's removed, we see a change in that quite substantially. So there's no doubt in my mind that there is the Deca is impacting them.
Yeah. I don't know about the long-term thing. I personally, I'm not saying, like, I believe you in what you're experiencing. And I would say, like he mentioned, is it dose dependent? Yeah, everything is, right? Like, so yeah. if you've run a few cycles and you've added 300, 400 in here and there, that's one thing. But I wonder how it is for that guy compared to, even if it wasn't a high dose, but I've seen people that they've gotten it prescribed and they're like, oh yeah, I'm on, whatever test for TRT and 200 Deca every week, for the last 10 years. I've seen that,
So it does seem to be something that's come to the head more recently, as in the last sort of 5 years or so.
Yeah.
We do have more people using it than ever now. So is it just a case of it's the percentage of number of people that's gone up, so as a result we're now seeing more people struggle with it? Is it other factors that are adding into this and this making people more vulnerable to it or more susceptible to problems in that area because of the general decline in mental health across the board with people?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is the honest answer. I don't know. I've only seen people having problematic issues around Deca in the last sort of 5 years. Prior to that, I to be honest, had never experienced anyone having an issue with it that created a problem. But I can't say whether that's due to any changes in any way or just due to the fact that there's more people taking it now, so we get more feedback. And people are more open in talking about the problems they might be experiencing with drugs as well.
I think people are more open and they're more willing to admit and look at those problems, whereas before I think we're just like, no, you just deal with it, put it out of your head, it's only 12 weeks, versus now people are like, oh, I feel sensitive to this, I want to switch compound. I think that people are a more advanced user than they were a decade or two ago.
Now, see, I'm not sure if I'd call that an advanced user.
They have a much deeper understanding, and it could be good, it could be bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could say, oh yeah, these things could cause mental issues, and now they're dealing with mental issues just because they think they are. But I think there's some self-awareness in there too. That maybe didn't recognize these things without having known it was a possibility.
I think it's also very easy to have a problem now where previously you would be like, yes, but I'm going to use self-management to overcome that problem and deal with it and move forward. And I think there's an element of that as well. It's very easy to be a victim of something now. I think, though, it doesn't remove the fact that, yes, people may be experiencing problems, but what tends to happen now is I'm experiencing problems, I'm a victim, so therefore I'm going to tell you about that and not do anything about it. Whereas previously it'd be like, right, I'm experiencing problems, but you know what? I'm going to work towards everything I can to fix those problems so they don't impact me.
also the users have changed as well. Before it was a more hardcore demographic of just underground bodybuilder. Now you have a more mainstream audience that is using, and they're kind of brought up in this world of like, well, if you're educated with this, you can avoid all the side effects. It was only the dumb people that don't understand this. You know what I'm saying? And then you should be able to have these cycles, these perfect cycles with no side effects. You know, it's safe for use, Dave. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
There's kind of that whole attitude.
There is definitely a look. You play with this shit. There's going to be problems.
Yeah.
Some of those problems can be managed. Some of those problems can't, and you just need to man the F up and deal with them because it's just part and parcel of what you do. You train hard, you're going to be sore.
Yeah.
If you're a person who trains hard, gets sore, and then relies on painkillers to deal with that soreness, you really want to learn to just enjoy the pain because it's a badge of what you've done, and it should be something that's worn with pride. It shouldn't be something that's medicated away.
All right. Couple more.
In my opinion, anyway.
We'll wrap this thing up. Question for the next podcast. Hi, guys. I've recently watched very old Dave's videos on probably his own YouTube channel. The video was released several years ago, and it contains Dave's off-season cycle where he says full truth about his multiple grams gear dosages. Dave seemed to be very truthful and wanted to share with others the reality of the sport. The question is how much hate Dave had to face for those videos.
I didn't get hate for being open about what I was doing. I got hate for how I looked predominantly.
Because you weren't trying to get shredded and be the conventional bodybuilder.
Yes, I wasn't your typical bodybuilder, and I didn't particularly refer to myself as a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
But when you ask what do you do while I lift weights, that's what people would tell you were, and so it was just the easiest way to get across what I did.
Yeah.
I definitely got hate for the visual, a lot of hate for the visual, particularly around the conditioning stuff. So there were a lot of factful. I mean, my best insult ever is he looks like a diseased cow. And I won that on my tombstone. I just love it. It really was. When I first started being open and exposed to the sort of feedback stuff, I struggled a bit with that, with the comments. I took them to heart. I found them upsetting. And then I just learned that, you know what, this is the internet. This is what it's like. And if you're going to stick your head above here and make a target of yourself, you're going to get shot at, and you just got to deal with it. And so I just started to ignore it and didn't respond to it. I used to respond to stuff that was untruthful because I wanted to portray the truth. And then I just began to realize I'm being trolled. I'm wasting my time.
Yeah.
You know, they're not interested in the truth. They just want to spout vile for the sake of it.
Yeah.
The ones directed at my family weren't the greatest. They weren't commonplace, but there were times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I quickly learned that this was a very unproductive use of my time responding to this crap. And at the end of the day, I could have proved them wrong in every aspect of everything they said, and it wouldn't change what they were putting up on social media. So eventually I just learned I got to the point where I just didn't read comments anymore because it was just pointless.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't. The thing is, as time went on, the negativity got less. And I think a lot of it was people just getting their head around who I was and what I was about and what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because it was different. No one had really done it in that way before. Rich had been open to an extent, but not a warts and all. He had managed his openness to a point where it was always seen in a positive light.
Absolutely.
Where I was very happy to show the negatives as well. And particularly around my skin. I mean, my skin got really bad for a period of time. But yeah, no, it's... There was a fair bit, definitely.
All right, I think I have one more here, and then we need some Uncle Dave's advice. He says, going to be running 500 tests with 20 to 40 pharma anavar. It's funny because when people say VAR nowadays, they got to throw in the pharma. There's some really good UGLs out there, just to let people know. Really good VAR, just like there's really good Primo nowadays too. It says about 10 weeks before I go on a beach festival in Albania. Wow. Have you ever been to Albania, Dave? I feel like we should go to a beach festival in Albania and do the show from there. It says it's in June. We got time. It says, do you guys think there would be a big difference in taking the Arimidex as 1 milligram 2 times per week, or should I split it up 0.5 4 times a week? Love the show, as always, and cheers.
The half-life is long enough that I wouldn't say it's necessary to split it up to 4 times a week. The only thing I'm going to say, and this is something that I've dealt with a few times, if this beach festival is a beach festival of the rave orientation, dance music orientation, and there's going to be the use of recreational drugs and potentially the high use of alcohol, just bear that in mind, that you're going to be going to a festival with elevated levels of hormones, which will mean very elevated levels of estrogen, and that coke is going to smash your prolactin levels, and you're going to have a few nasty fluctuations because of that. So just bear that in mind going into it, that it might be worth preempting a few things moving into that situation.
Like what?
Well, the one thing is, if you're going into a festival with high levels of testosterone, I would definitely look at putting in some anti-estrogens slightly higher than you would normally use before going, so that you've got some buffer for the inevitable elevation of estrogen you're going to get from alcohol. What cocaine will do is initially spike.
We don't want to say that word. That's a bad word around these parts. It didn't used to be when we started the podcast. We could say whatever we wanted. Now we can't even say the R word anymore, Dave.
Let's go back on Tumble. That was much fun.
Tumble? Is that
whatever it was we were using.
Tumble. I like that one.
What was that one we used for 1 week?
It was called Tumble.
It was called Tumble, right?
Yeah,
I like
Tumble.
that place.
We still release the podcast over on Tumble, by the way, each week. You guys can go over to Tumble and check it out.
That's a Dave-friendly platform, is Tumble.
You got excited about that. You're like, yay! Tumble!
So certain compounds will increase prolactin whilst they're being used, and then will crash it post they have been used.
Yeah.
And you will also see massive spikes in cortisol post-use as well.
God, I could only imagine with that particular compound, the Coca-Cola compound. Yeah, that would not be fun. Advice of the day, Dave. What's your... Dave, I told you, I texted you yesterday. I said, Dave, think of some good advice and write it down.
What did I tell you? You're not the boss of me. You can't tell me what to do.
He literally wrote that back to me. I was trying to be a friend to remind him, because last week he was like, oh, I had a good one. I forgot to write it down. So I was trying to be a friend and be like, Dave, you've got one job. You bring the advice for the week.
Yeah, but I haven't got one job. I have to babysit you. I have to carry you.
And take care of Christmas Cabbage. By the way, Matt Blevins is with us. He said, Dave, I can assure you the blue octopus is not Christmas Cabbage.
It's not blue.
Was that a magic trick you just pulled there?
Don't know what you're talking about.
that blue octopus, yeah.
You mean that one?
Whoa.
Anyway, frig.
One job. One job.
Do you know how much pressure this is?
I'm telling you, man. It could be as simple as like, remember to brush your teeth every night. It's important to take care of your teeth. Thank you. Good night. Have a nice day. See you next week.
Remember to brush your teeth. It's very important to brush your teeth. It's actually. Do you realize that oral hygiene is directly linked to heart
health? Yes, I did. I did. That's why it is an important one, Dave.
Particularly, did you also know that if you've got a wire hanging in your heart, that it actually attracts infection?
I learned that last week on the D and Stuff podcast.
Did I say that last week? See, I don't know what I've said.
Well, you told me, maybe it was 2 weeks ago or something. Maybe you told me off the air, but I didn't know that. Yeah. How is your heart doing, by the way?
It's fine.
Still working?
Yeah, when they did it, I got some basically razor burn where they'd shaved above it.
Yeah.
And it got a bit weepy and a bit weird. So I rang them and they said, come here, let's have a look. They put me on antibiotics just as a precursor measure. But the dressing came off last Friday, which means I could finally shower again. And it's so neat. In fact, here. I bet you can't even see the surgical line.
No, you can't.
No,
I see it. It looks like a big tribal line.
Yeah. So they've done a really, really neat job with it. It's very, very good. So I had a checkup Monday. All good.
Can you feel it? Like if you touch your chest?
Yeah, there's a lump there. Yeah, it's about size of a Zippo lighter.
Okay. Huh. That's not too big.
So I've got another 7 weeks before they actually do the X-ray to check it's all sat in the right place.
Yeah.
Which seems a bit odd to me because it seems like why would you wait 8 weeks so everything's fully healed and embedded to then find out it's in the wrong place?
Yeah, you think they'd want to know sooner, but could it shift? Is that what they're worried about?
So they do it straight after, and then. But I would have thought you're probably better checking it at week 2 or week 3 because that's where it's most likely to have moved in that time period.
Yeah, should have probably put a cone on you too. You know what I'm talking about? Those cones to keep you away from it for a few weeks. That's why they're not checking to see if it's in the right place. They're checking to see if you moved it from scratching at it and stuff. You know what I mean?
Okay. Dave's advice: do not be afraid to be selfish.
Okay. I feel like we may have heard this one before, but carry on. Go ahead.
Elaborate.
Okay. Elaborate.
Just, you're entitled to things too. There's nothing wrong with saying, I want to do this. I want to have that. Obviously, if it becomes one-sided, it's a fucking problem. But at the same time, don't be afraid to stand up for what you want. For you.
I want Dave to do a cartwheel.
Yeah, that ain't never friggin' happening, is it? Come on.
Especially right now with your arm.
Roly-poly, yeah, you might get that one. I am dieting, though. I'm back on diet.
Are you? How you doing your cardio?
Not yet. I start that next week.
Okay, are you not allowed to do cardio at the moment with your heart?
No, I just wanted to give the wound a bit longer to heal before I started doing cardio.
Right, well, we will be checking in, guys. Comment below to remind me to ask Dave if he's doing his cardio yet next week. All right.
Yeah, don't be scared to say no to people. Don't be scared to say no. I'm not doing that, or I'm not helping you if it's going to be detrimental to you.
Yeah, I want fish and chips from England again.
No, post them over. They might not be so nice when you get them, right?
What was that place we went to that was overlooking those fields and stuff, and we ate fish and chips there?
Oh, Compost Cafe.
Oh, man, that place was so good.
Compost fish and chips. It was okay. There's better, to be fair. There is better, but it was
that was good. I had them there, and then I had them in Manchester, too. And they had those, the peas, like the mushy peas.
Mushy peas, yeah.
Yeah, those are good too. I like that.
I don't like mushy peas.
I never had them before, but it's very carby, like potatoes, kind of. You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't taste like a veggie. It tastes like a carb.
It's very starchy.
Yeah.
But curry sauce, proper fish and chip shop curry sauce.
I didn't have any curry while I was over there.
Well, it's not the curry sauce from a chip shop's not never seen curry in its life. It's a powdered thing that they just mixed with water, but it's got a very unique flavour. Fish and chip shop curry sauce.
I might have written something down here for you, Dave, a question about British language. I for real may have. Nope. I must have lost it. Yeah, I had a question here for you, a question about British language, but it's gone. It's gone. Or maybe I texted it to you. It's been a while. Anyway, guys, we appreciate you tuning into the show. Comment with questions for the next episode. Go over to Tumble. You can watch our program over there. It's Rumble, Dave, but you were close. I like Tumble. I think that we should come up with a new...
I'm not talking to you now.
Rumble.
Go away. I can't remember what it was. I'm old and senile.
You took a lot of Deca. There's that too, right?
I can't think of anything worse than getting dementia.
Oh, me too, man. Antihistamines, like Benadryl. Prolonged use of that stuff is no good for dementia as well. Creatine is supposed to be good, though. You should start taking creatine. Just like 5-10 grams a day. It's cheap. I started using it. It's supposed to be good to help with the aging brain. So why not, right?
Yeah, I don't think I've got a brain anymore.
Check out some creatine at truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there. You can probably get some from Strom. I bet Strom has creatine, don't they?
You know what? I'm not sure. He didn't do a lot of the basics, and then he brought a basics range out. So I don't know if he brought creatine out or not.
Excuse me. Well, you guys let me know if Strom Sports Nutrition has creatine. Supplementsource.ca. What?
No, I won't.
No, not you. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people who like us, our listeners.
To people who like us.
Yeah, exactly.
You sure about the... Okay, no problem.
Most of them, at least. We did have one guy who commented on he was the guy who was like, ain't nobody growing off of anything less than 2 grams or doing a contest on anything less than 2 grams. So we did that topic, right? He commented again, and he was like, think big. It's more like think small. He was like, this podcast sucks. I would like to invite that guy on. I want to invite him on and have him educate me about what it takes to do a contest prep. Bring your pictures. I want to see how you turned out at the shows. You know what I'm saying?
I want to see how big this guy is now, yeah.
I'd love to see that. We could go head to head if you want. We could put my pictures up with your pictures. My clients who've done under a gram and turned pro. I told you I got 2 of them. So not all of them have been able to do that, but there are people who can even turn pro at under 2 grams.
There is a gentleman called Sean Joseph Tavernier who won Rookie of the Year.
You mentioned him. You mentioned him.
There were no shortage of muscle on him.
So, guys, if you want to check out anything else Dave is doing, he's good friends with a gentleman named Jesse James West now. They'll be doing the podcast moving forward, I think. I'm very jealous. Dave was on with Jesse James West. You didn't even mention me, did you? You didn't say, oh, I do a fantastic podcast every week with my great friend Scott McNally. You guys at home should all tune into it.
Sorry, the question of do I know any dickheads in America never came up.
Thank you to everybody from Patreon. You guys are awesome. Evalbloodanalysis.com. Get your lab work done by Dave, except for estrone. He's not going to do it for you. And for another episode of the podcast, guys, we'll see you soon. Dave, thank you. Bye.